Welcome everybody to our very last Bi-alogue of the year, Biplus Intersectionality. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As some of you may or may not know me, I'm Dr. Mimi, and I'm the co-founder of the Los Angeles Bi Task Force. And I also work as a psychologist. I'm a professor, consultant, and trainer. And I created the Bi on Life Self-Empowerment series. And I'm also currently running the Biplus Women's Space group. And I think I have some of my members here tonight. So shout out to all of you. Thank you so much for coming. So yeah, I've been around and I've seen a lot of things. But tonight, we are doing what we call our Bi-alogue. This is a series that we started this year. We have had already 2 different Bi-alogues through our Insta Live, in case you were able to see those. And the reason we decided to create these talks this year was because of COVID and everything being virtual, and really wanting to focus on some hot topics that affect our Biplus community. And for today, as you all know, there's just been so much going on in our current cultural climate and the racial uprisings, and really this discussion around race, racism, hate in our country. And so I just, really wanted to have this talk today. And so I'm gonna sort of introduce everything, and then I'm gonna introduce all of our panelists, and then I'll have some moderator questions. And then towards the end, we're going to leave about 20-25 minutes or so for audience Q&A. So, hold on to those burning questions as we move through all of this. And then I think the other housekeeping was that this event is being recorded. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. So before I go into the panelists, I wanted to do just a little bit of a personal story about myself, and then you'll hear all about our really, really fabulous friends and activists. But so most of you may know me as a, bisexual community organizer, leader, speaker, etc. But, I have many facets to who I am and my identity. And, I grew up actually as an immigrant refugee from Vietnam. I'm ethnically Vietnamese and Chinese, and came to the US very young with my parents. And so we had really, really modest upbringing. My parents didn't speak any English. And so I grew up, learning 3 cultures, speaking 3 languages, and really not having a lot of role models in terms of queerness growing up at all. And so I had to figure a lot of things out. And when I came out to my parents, I didn't have a word bisexual in Cantonese or Vietnamese. So, my coming out journey really is very much informed by my ethnic cultural upbringing. And, as a cis, bi, Asian American woman, I really feel that all of my activism and my community leadership has been because of all of these different parts of me. And growing up in a kind of more traditional collectivistic upbringing where family was really important, community was really important, survival was really important. And so I really feel like all of that has helped me create all the groups, Fluid at UCLA, AMBI, which is now AMBI, the Los Angeles Bi Task Force, and all the other groups and orgs that I've been a part of. So, you can't really separate my bisexuality from all these other pieces of me. So now kind of touching on Black Lives Matter, I am an Asian American person. I experience anti-Asian prejudice and discrimination. And, as a person of color, and right now with COVID, there's definitely a lot of anti-Asian sentiment going on out there. And, fortunately, I haven't been, personally attacked, but I have, friends, colleagues who experienced all that. But I wanted to also just acknowledge that, Black people are treated the worst. And so if we can protect and uplift Black lives, then we'll be protecting and uplifting all lives, right? All people of color, all queer people of color. And so, that's why it's so important for us to have this discussion today. All right. So I am really so happy and pleased. I've been planning this event for months, but to bring to you today all of these activists, leaders, artists, and some of you are my friends, to really discuss diversity in the Biplus community, which I don't think we have really gotten a huge chance to talk about. And so, Biplus community is not exempt from racism, sexism, classism, all sorts of isms, right? And so we're going to talk today about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm really looking forward to that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our first speaker. His name is RJ Aguiar.
Hi.
And,
How you doing?
some of you have maybe seen him, photos of him all over, but he has collaborated with the LA Bi Task Force before. So he's definitely a friend of the Bi Task Force. But so his official blurb is he's a Bi Latinx producer, writer, performer, and advocate who's best known for his comedy and activism on social media. He's been featured in outlets such as BuzzFeed, Upworthy, New Media, Rockstars, HuffPost, and Remezcla.
Remezcla, yeah.
And appeared in such films as Something Like Summer, Kiss Me, Kill Me, and Such Good People. He's also the recipient of 7 Clio Awards, member of YouTube's Next Up class, and the Advocate's 40 Under 40 list, and spoken at such venues as VidCon, San Diego Comic-Con International, and the White House.
Yeah, about this very, or some of the, well, yeah, about this very subject, among others. But yeah, it's just been so funny because it's being a bi activist and a bi activist that, is very kind of public about their intersections. It's been such a wild ride because it all started, like I always say, I've been Forrest Gumping my way through this entire process. I was, I started out as a YouTuber really before I was even out. I mean, I was kind of thrust into it by like dating a YouTuber basically, and kind of becoming a part of the YouTube queer community that way. But even then, it was it was not until like I kept getting a lot of resistance from people in comments and stuff about how like, oh, you're with a man, so you're gay now, right? And I'm just like, no, no, no. And so it was through making one video that I, thought to myself, oh, I'm going to talk about my sexuality once, so I never have to talk about it again. Lo and behold, the video goes pretty viral just because there was such a need for that. And yeah, that was kind of my first like sort of getting thrust into by activism, and sort of really it was like life experience that kind of really even I would say just forced me to embrace and be vocal about my sort of intersections, which is funny because like I know some people may look at my phenotype and be like, what's he doing on an intersectionality panel? But yeah, it's interesting just because my parents are both Cuban immigrants, which if you know anything about Latinx people, you'll know that, the Cubans tend to be the more conservative ones. They're one of the reasons why Florida went red this last election. And so it was just really weird actually kind of being brought up with this white is right, yay, 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 America mindset kind of grilled into me, but still, because I still experienced a lot of like institutionalized and dare I say like even LAPD will still racially profile me. TSA still racially profiles me, even though like it's not even necessarily based on my phenotype. It's based on like the name on my ID. But that just goes to show you how tricky all this stuff can be. and how much like even when you don't necessarily wear your minority status on your sleeve, like it's still so ingrained, and it's still so uh it's still so precarious in terms of like it can still find you, those disparities. And yeah, they always, they tend to obviously pile up, the more diversity boxes you check. um, but also wanting to just make sure we acknowledge too that, like, yes, intersectionality was a term initially coined, a legal term initially coined to describe the experience of Black women. Credit to Professor Kimberly Crenshaw for as the original originator of the term. So just, yeah, wanting to also make sure we acknowledge that, like, very early on in this little dialogue. And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, thank you so much, RJ, for
Sure.
reminding us of some of the academic stuff as well.
Yeah, and it's just been interesting, actually, even because even in the online sort of queer activist space, like, it's just, even amongst us, it's interesting how a lot of that terminology, not just the term intersectionality, but a lot of terminology has just kind of evolved through usage. And I do think that the fact that this term has taken on a whole new meaning just kind of shows how much people are hungry to have these discussions.
Absolutely. Yes, there's a question for Kai about ASL. And actually, Kai is the next person I am introducing. And Kai, I have known for over 10 years. She's a part of the LA scene. So those of you who are in LA, part of Ambi or Ambi, know her probably, pretty well. And she's performed at some of our Bi Arts Fests. So yeah, she's a special person in the LA scene. Kai Hazelwood is a dedicated choreographer, dance educator, event producer, and public speaker, raising the profile of Biplus/queer and BIPOC community issues through art projects, community events, and public speaking. She has appeared in BuzzFeed videos and speaks at high schools and colleges about the Biplus community issues. In 2016, she choreographed the Biplus contingent of the LA Pride Parade, which was so awesome, featuring the cast of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Kai is on faculty at Chapman University and is the artistic director of her own collaborative, Good Troublemakers. Hi.
Hello. Well, I'll start by answering the questions in the chat. I dropped my social media handle for whomever asked that. And yes, I do know ASL. It was actually my first major in college because I grew up with a deaf best friend throughout high school, and we used to take the bus to and from school together. And so she taught me. She was my first teacher, and then she would get bored in class and ignore her interpreters. So I would distract them and make them teach me things. And then it was my first major in college. I'm very rusty at this point, but yes, that's where my waving is coming from, Marissa. But a little bit about what led me here today, aside from the wonderful invitation from Dr. Mimi, who I have known for a long time and admire, and is just a lovely human being all around. Activism is something, it's funny, I've been talking about this a lot recently. It wasn't really a choice. I feel like being born into a Black body and moving into the arts and being almost 6 feet tall and being a ballerina was like, oh, I have no choice. As soon as my body enters this space or sets foot on this stage, I am a political statement, whether I want to be one or not. So in college, I made the decision to go ahead and embrace that instead of fight that. And that really set me on this path to what it means to allow my arts and my activism to intersect. And that's both with BIPOC issues as well as queer/BIPlus issues. I use both terms to identify myself because why not? We can do that. And so as these things really started intersecting for me, I started looking around and realizing that I'd been collaborating with a lot of the same artists for a number of years, and that we were doing a thing. And so perhaps it was time to go ahead and formalize it into a thing. And so Good Troublemakers was born, which, as far as I know, is the only arts collaborative in the world that centers middle of the spectrum folks. Just about 100% of our membership identify as Biplus or queer. And we're also a multiracial, multicultural group, which leads to a ton of interesting tensions. And I feel like we put in just as much work to how we relate to each other internally as a community, to the things that we put out in the world, because there's no way to really be a multicultural, multiracial collaborative without really attending to those relationships really deeply. Because of that, people sometimes go, I don't understand what y'all do. Like, what is it that you do? And we not only produce events often centering Biplus folks, like our event Unicorn Party that we have attempted to do annually, and then COVID. So we'll see what the future of it holds. But it's a night celebrating the Biplus community. We also create original dance theater works and multimedia artistic projects and events. So our work is a little tough to pin down because aside from what we do externally, we're also a really multi-layered mutual aid network. Because especially when COVID hit, it felt really critical to recognize ourselves as more than economic agents. Like, we're so much more than what we put out in the world. So what did it mean to prioritize our community's safety, housing, food, mental health, and all of that above putting things out in the world? So it has led to a lot of really interesting experiments in what it means to create a mutual aid network, whether that's delivering food to each other, whether that's sharing money when we're able to. We've had 2 members who have come down with COVID and in our little community raised enough money to pay their bills for a month or 2. And so really focusing not only on the values that we put out in the world, but the values that we embody within our community is really equally important to us. So it's a little bit about me. Looking forward to talking to y'all more later. And yes, y'all is a beautiful word. You don't have to be from the South to use it.
Yes, here,
Thank you so
here,
much,
here.
Kai. Yeah, and Good Troublemakers. I mean, I so look forward to another live in-person performance. Saw them last year. You all were just amazing. I was getting choked up, I remember, with some of the pieces. So thank you so much, Kai. So the next person I'm going to introduce is King Leo. And King Leo has also been a performer at our Bi Arts Fest. And I remember afterward, I spoke with Yasmin because you performed with Yasmin that night. I said, we need to keep an eye on this Leo. So King Leo BAKARi, aka Leo Breckenridge, is a rapper and aspiring screenwriter originally from the Tidewater area, Virginia. 3 years after co-writing an interlude for Ro James, he dropped his own debut project introducing his jazz hop sound and perspective on the world as a proud bisexual Black man with his 5 The album, I think I'm saying that right, featuring artists like Stacey Barth and T.C. Carson. This year, he was selected and made notable appearances on mixtape projects presented by legendary rappers Cassidy and Jadakiss. His latest single, I Got a Story to Tell, featuring Babs Bunny of MTV's Making the Band, will be available soon on all major music platforms. King Leo.
Dr. Mimi, it's so good to see you again, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's funny you mentioned that performance because I booked that Bi Arts Festival performance that year from coming out. I came out on a mixtape, and the mixtape,
That's awesome.
yeah, went to the right people, and that was my first set. And it also like completely accepting myself as bisexual changed my life I know it sounds crazy.
Uh-oh. Little technical glitch.
And I got up there to do it and I almost died because I couldn't breathe. And now I run 3 miles a day. No, really, like to be a part of this has really like changed my life. As far as activism goes, I'm just an artist. and I'm a Black man, and I have consistently had to be concerned with the business of my country and how it treats and respects people that look like me. Couple that with being a member of, while I am a proud bisexual, I'm a proud member of the LGBTQ plus community. And I think that we've learned as a community that it's better for us to be unified than separated. And I try to do everything I do with that in mind, with truth in mind, with honesty in mind. And so, my activism is just being me. I'm out there for the people that's just trying to be themselves and may not have all the bells and whistles of our LGBTQ plus counterparts, but we are just as gay and just as bisexual and just as much a part of that world as everybody else. And we would love to be welcomed just like we want to welcome everybody else. And so I'm hoping some of that gets discussed tonight. But I'm very happy to be here and share my perspective with this amazing panel. And not just because I'm a rapper, but I'm going to let all of you know right now, I am the rookie on this all-star team, okay? So if I say the wrong thing or I get it, just forgive me. I promise you I come in love and a whole lot of peace, as we need that as a country and a community right now. So thank you.
Oh, well, King Leo, I appreciate that. We welcome you with open arms. And, I think that, activism takes on many, many journeys. It looks like many different things. So I feel like once you come out and you become an activist, you actually age faster. So you sort of like become an adolescent when you come out. That's what they say. And then when you become an activist, you actually kind of age faster. That's my little theory. So welcome.
Okay. I'm sorry. We have to interrupt there because if you are aging faster, have we seen her?
Right.
Dr. Mimi is not aging
I think she's thinking about right. I think we've all aged, 10 years in the past 10 months, but
But I was going to literally say, Dr. Mimi, can you give me the phone number of whoever you sold your soul to so that I can get the same going on.
I'm pretty sure that it's a painting that she has in the attic. There's something like that. But yeah.
I think more people just need to realize that being unproblematic is great for your skin. I think that's
speak.
Aww. I didn't pay them to say this, folks. Seriously. But much love to all of you back. Thank you. That makes me feel good. So last but not least whatsoever is Heron Greensmith, who I have known for almost 10 years because we met at the very first White House Bisexual Community Roundtable. Yay. And it was such a big day. It was so amazing. And Heron is also an author of the Invisible Majority Report. And, I was very gratefully able to collaborate and add some recommendations in there on the mental health piece. But Heron is a policy attorney and advocate who specializes in providing support for Biplus communities, currently monitoring anti-LGBTQI rhetoric, networks, and communities as a senior research analyst for the LGBTQI Justice at Political Research Associates, and teaching at Boston University School of Law. Heron has worked in progressive advocacy spaces for over a decade with the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs, the Movement Advancement Project, Family Equity Council, and the National LGBTQ Task Force. Heron is an agender parent who uses queer as a personal label and bisexual as a community label. Take it away.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the LA Bi Task Force. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm using like these really cheap ass. Okay, great. That was just to test out whether this is going to be a cool crowd that I can swear in, because I tend to swear a lot when I talk, especially about bi stuff. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit about my day job and a little bit about my progress as a bi and queer person. And so as Mimi said, I monitor anti-LGBT movements. And it's really, really hard and awful. You know, I get to read every day why people like me and people whom I love, and sometimes occasionally like literally me, you know, shouldn't exist. And if we do exist, certainly shouldn't have access to justice and to, you know, houses and food and, you know, not to mention like, you know, recognition and non-discrimination protections for ourselves and our families. But the reason I do that work, it kind of relates to my journey of coming out and coming out as an activist, because I do think, I agree with Mimi, it's kind of two different phases, or it has been for me. I came out as bi ages ago, back in college. And like many bi folks I know, was alone for a really long time. As someone who was openly bi, just seemed to kind of alienate all of my friends at the time, as, you know, and everyone will find this familiar, as you shed the friends who are problematic, and then you wait for a minute to attract the friends who love you truly for who you are. You know, I get into law school, I was out, and I knew I wanted to do LGBT policy. And as I went through law school, graduated, got my first job doing LGBT policy, it also became clear that, you know, centrism is not going to save us. Moving towards the middle is just not going to fucking save us.
Oh my God.
I'm not even totally convinced. I'm not even totally convinced that, you know, like policy advocacy is going to save us at this point. You know, like I now work for a, you know, incredibly leftist organization. I organized our employees into a union so that I would never get fired again for being queer, as has happened twice at LGBT organizations. I've been fired for my bi advocacy and for being bi. And, you know, I'm kind of at the point where I'm team hashtag out about your shit. And the more I am out about my shit, the more I collect people around me who love me for my shit. And I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of, and my pride, I think, shows, and I'm able to again collect people around me who are also proud of me and of themselves. And we're all on this journey together, you know, me and my friends and my community and all of you. And I am also proud that I feel like my journey is headed in the right direction. As Mimi said, I'm bi, I'm queer, I'm agender, I'm a parent of a kid who calls me a mom, but if anyone else calls me a mom, it feels really fucking weird. I only came out as agender last year because everything's a fucking journey, you know, and that was also a really foundational moment. As I said, shed some friends, and other friends stepped into that void and said, hey, like, how can we be there for you? I have chronic pain. What else can I be out about? I live in Boston. I'm a New Englander, born and bred. So hit me up, people who, you know, are uncomfortable with certain vestiges of Puritanism, but still find themselves comfortable in an area in which nobody looks each other in the eye. Hello, that's me. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have some East Coasters here, so you know we're very bi-coastal tonight. I love the puns. You know, that's a stereotype that's true about us. So I have so many questions, so many questions, but I'm going to try to stick to the ones that I had planned to give. And the first one is, you know, some of you spoke a little bit about it in terms of your coming out journey, but what are the challenges you faced in other marginalized communities due to having a Biplus identity?
I mean, I think and then this is actually even something that I've only really come to terms with and explored a lot recently, was just sort of, I think, especially because there's so many people who kind of share my heritage who are very conservative, like it has created a very kind of complex and fraught relationship with my own sort of heritage. The fact that there are so many people who, come from a similar background and in the same ethnicity who just who can either support what someone like Trump does, or at the very least not be disgusted and horrified enough to vote against him and the party that supports him. So yeah, like, and even within my own family, like my parents are still very much conservative, although they swear up and down that they're voting libertarian for president. But yeah, it creates a very, very complex and fraught relationship. And in a lot of ways, I even look at other members of the Latinx community and I kind of am envious. Like like someone, I've like friends who are Puerto Rican, for instance, and it's like they obviously have no qualms about sort of reconciling their ethnicity with their queerness, just because they're a voting bloc that tends to skew a lot more liberal and be a lot more open-minded. Yeah, so it's just been interesting, I think, in terms of that. It's just added a whole level of complexity and emotional trickiness to my relationship with my heritage.
Yeah, I know. For me, and I just think this in general, but certainly about for my experience of the Black community, is that people fear what they don't understand. And if I can't place you where I want you to be, that scares me. It makes me uncomfortable. And it's not even something that a lot of people are open to talking about. And that's why I try to, talk about different things in music. Like what I'm really excited about with the I Got a Story to Tell record with Babs is it's non-binary. I never use a gender the whole record. And I think that is, like, to me, that's human. And if it was understood more as a human experience, I think that we would have more adoption. But it's been very difficult being in the Black communities to be a bisexual person and to say that I have the ability, right, to love whom I want. It's really all I'm trying to say. But when you say bisexual means I'm polyamorous, or I'm, a freak, like super freak, or I don't have any, goals of like marriage, or, it has all these different connotations in my community that is just not realistic. And it's a struggle trying to communicate that.
Well, as a polyamorous person who is also not married to their partner of 14 years, I do want to trouble the waters a little bit.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was like, I'm a freak though. I
Also a certified freak.
Proud freak, but
maybe only 2 days a week though for me.
No, but I guess my point is, like, that's just in my opinion, just like white people and Black people and Asian people are not monoliths. Neither are bisexual people, is my point. Absolutely. So the fact that somebody met you two, and they said, oh, so bisexuals are freaks and polyamorous, is not right.
Exactly.
True.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like if a Black dude robs you and you walk around saying all Black men rob people. We're not a monolith. And that's part of the problem with our communities is we're trying to associate it like that. When the bottom line is it just means that I love whoever the hell I want.
Did he want to say fuck? Are we allowed? Are there children in here?
This isn't TV, but I wouldn't dare say that word. I'll try to.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
We won't bleep it out. It's not NBC. We're not NBC. It's funny though that you talk about like us not being a monolith, but it's like, yeah, we are. I think part of what defines part of what defines our community is the fact that we're such a diverse, like we are the most diverse in terms of, race, ethnicity, and gender identity. We are the most diverse slice of the pie, in addition to really being the biggest slice of the LGBTQIA plus pie. So it's like, yeah, I think the fact that we are so diverse is, I think, what defines us. And so, yeah, you're naturally just going to get all these different perspectives and experiences in the space just sort of naturally.
Heron, did you have more you were going to say? No? Okay. I'll jump in then. A little bit echoing what King Leo said, I was speaking at a Pride event earlier this year, and I was listening, this was in the summer, Pride was June, and I was listening to white speaker after white speaker after white speaker say how much they supported Black Lives Matter, while immediately in the next breath condemning protests that bordered on riots or any sort of property damage or anything like that. And when it came to my turn, I kind of abandoned what I planned to say because I was so heated by that point. And I just said, there's this experience that I'll speak for myself as someone who's Black, where I feel like I get to be a Black activist or a queer activist, and I get to be in Black spaces or I get to be in queer spaces, but they don't get to mix. And what I said was that for this Pride in this year in particular, it is even more important that we show up as our complete selves. We show up with the amount of grief and rage and all kinds of things that we are feeling right now, particularly as Black people in this historical moment, because it's real. Like, that's what's happening. And come on, the first Pride was a fucking riot. Are you gonna tell me that you're gonna stand here and condemn what's happening now? But while you're at Pride, celebrating a movement that was founded on a riot?
A riot started by women of color.
Thank you. And trans women of color. Like, come on. So what I feel this transformation that 2020 has brought for me is the Kai of no fucks. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say because I feel like the stakes are too high for me personally. And by that I mean the toll that not talking about stuff takes on my body and my nervous system and my mental health is too high. I'm not going to prioritize anyone's comfort in any space, be that my Black family, be that queer spaces. I'm not going to prioritize anyone's comfort over my own health and well-being. And I don't think, thank you, Kai of no fucks, yes. I don't think that that genie is ever going back in the bottle. I think this is the version of me that I'm going to cultivate and nurture for the rest of my life. And more importantly, I feel really proud that what that version of me allows me to do is kick open doors for people coming behind me. I came out in my family when I was 15, I think, 14, 15. And my baby cousin just came out 2 years ago as gay. And he had all these reservations and fears about it, but felt like he could come to me because there was someone that looked like him, that he knew loved him, that he could talk to. So I feel that it's important for me to be honest, to protect myself. I also think it's critical because it's opening doors for people coming up after me. And that feels really, really loud and really important to the work that I do in the world and the way that I want to walk through the world. So I love this question because I do think there is a lot of tension there, but I've just decided that that tension is now like my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, are you uncomfortable with me in a particular space? Boom, here I am. So that's just, I'm gonna snack on it. Just, bring me those uncomfortable feelings. That's where I am. That's what 2020 has done to me, everybody.
I think about, like, you thought you were uncomfortable before. you hardly even knew me.
Bitch, you thought.
Yeah, you thought I was loud before. Me. Give me a minute.
Right.
Love it. I love the eating it for breakfast. It makes us stronger, all of this stuff, right?
It's my skincare.
Maybe that's what's helping me.
Yeah, it's not a surprise that all of us are fine as fuck, okay? We all look good.
I mean, yeah, tea. That's tea.
So, I think some of you have touched on this already, but my next question was really kind of looking at the Biplus community and talking about what are the challenges you faced within the Biplus community. Some of you have been in it longer than others, but where you've had challenges with your other non-bi identities.
It's funny when you say, like, by community, because sometimes I'm just like, wait, what community? Because I think part of it is just getting there, like getting to a point where there's enough of us that feel comfortable enough identifying ourselves and being like, hey, I'm over here, and then, you know, gathering into spaces like that's, I would say, even still, even in a liberal city like this liberal bubble of LA, like it's a relatively new phenomenon. So yeah, like that's, I would say, yeah, what community in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of it is also just there's a lot of barriers, I think, also in between. There's a lot of misconceptions, I think, between like people who use the capital B bi or bisexual, and versus everybody else who's bi plus, who's like pans, who has chosen the label pansexual, but only because they've heard mistakenly from someone else that being bi or identifying as bi is like transphobic or something. And so that's been another thing that I've found over and over and over is people who just who could very well be a member of this community if they had a better idea of what that community even represents, because there is so much misinformation out there that we have to combat, just to find one another, and just to sort of get or be able to advocate on our own behalf, and not have the straight writers on Big Mouth trying to explain the difference between bi and pan.
Right, that's a whole nother thing. I was gonna add to that the truth is, for me, the bisexual community I've never had a problem. I've been so embraced, so supported. Once I know, to RJ's point, like once we know each other are each other, however way that happens, I've been super embraced. I am not embraced by the other letters around the B. There has been some serious drama in my life, in my world, with that. Now I want everybody to know that I have waited patiently to write a record about it, because it probably would be very ugly. And I don't want the infighting. I want world peace. You know what I mean? This is very much me. But that I can say, but as far as the B, all love, all the time, every time. That's just been my experience.
I want to talk a little bit here about communities and scarcity, because I literally study, why people are incentivized to draw lines, and that's all the way from what I study, why people, all the way from like why people are anti-trans feminists, for example. I study TERFs.
Masochist.
Hit me up if you want to talk about TERFs.
J.K. Rowling, that bitch. No,
she's not a TERF because she's not a radical feminist.
Oh,
she's just a TEF. That's my tea. But you can analogize. You can analogize that line drawing into the gatekeeping that some bi and pan people feel around who gets to identify as appropriately non-monosexual, right? And who is a particular label as a non-monosexual either does or does not exclude others. And I want to give us all a little bit of credit, because all that bullshit is just passed down to us through white supremacy, through capitalism, through scarcity, that tells us that there are scarce resources, that there isn't enough right now to create safety and health and well-being and a life free from violence for all of us, and that we need to decide who among us deserves access to those scarce resources more than others do. That's a lie. Scarcity is a lie, but it's a really pervasive lie, because right now we really do need to make enough cash to have a warm bed. We really do need to make enough cash to have lunch. And it's really difficult to remember that even though we're holding the cash and the warm lunch in our hand, and someone else on the street that we can see outside isn't holding a warm lunch and they're not warm, it's hard to remember that scarcity is a myth. So I always try and give credit and comfort and speak from abundance. And that's why I plug for my Teespring store on my website. I have a shirt that says "Buy and Pan Together Forever." We are not one another's enemy. Trust me. Trust me. I have struggled with folks in the bi community. You know, I also see, you know, lesbian and gay folks who strongly gatekeep. And at my work at Political Research Associates, we condemn leaders and narrative and rhetoric and networks. We don't condemn the individual adherents. So while I could be super, super pissed that lesbian Karen thinks the fact that I've touched a dick means I'm not queer enough, you know, I can also remember that it's not lesbian Karen who's taking away queer spaces, who is killing trans people on the street, you know, who is detaining my siblings, who is putting my siblings in places of incarceration, who is telling my siblings they can't run on track field. That's the Alliance Defending Freedom. That's Betsy DeVos and King and all of their money. So I can hate lesbian Karen and just scream it to my pillow every night. But when I wake up in the morning, who I fight is capitalism, white supremacy, Christian right, consolidation of power. So I want to focus on who our enemy is.
Question about your tea. Is there also a tea in your shop that says appropriately non-monosexual? Because I want a shirt that says that.
No, but there is one that says Gold Star Bisexual. Because guess what? Are you bi? Then you're a Gold Star Bisexual.
Hey.
It also comes in a tank.
Oh, so I can let the guns breathe.
You can let the guns out.
But I think I'm glad you said that, because I think it's important to recognize who we battle against, really, because just recently, the other day, I watched the documentary "Where's My Roy Cohn?" You know, and Roy Cohn, who has been responsible for a lot of the people that we're on this call talking about, was gay, but was actively in a position and pursuing policies to have us not have the rights, you know what I mean, that our community needs. So that's why I'm very careful to say, you know, to click up who's who, because we really battle against principalities in my mind. And all we can do is be the change you want to see. And the first thing we should do, to your point, is be good to each other, please.
Well,
Yeah, and let me be clear. You can be friends with very select people. And I am not friends with that lesbian Karen at all. She can, I never need to see her again in my entire life. You know, she like hit on me. And then when she found out I was bi, she just like turned around. This is an example, but you know, how many times has that happened to bi femmes? You know, how many times has someone hit on you and then when they find out you're bi, they turn around and walk away?
I've lost count.
Yeah.
My personal favorite.
Run into lesbian Karen.
Yeah, my personal favorite is well, I don't usually date bisexuals, but I'll make an exception for you.
Oh, wow, thank you so much. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'll put on my fancy lingerie for you.
That's where I get into like the Alexis from Schitt's Creek voice. Like, oh my gosh. Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about this question, Mimi, that you just brought up, because I love this idea, Heron, of really focusing on what the structure is that you're fighting. And it's funny in my teaching, because the class I teach at Chapman, it's really funny. They hired me to teach advanced modern dance technique. And I said, cool, but if you hire me, I'm going to teach it through a seriously anti-racist lens, which means I'm going to completely blow up what you think of as not only modern dance technique, but also how a collegiate dance class should function. Cool? And to their credit, Chapman, there we go. They're all the words. Was on board and was like, go for it. But a lot of what I spend my time with my students thinking about and unpacking is how it's really easy to get lost in the structure and depersonalize it. and how critical it is to also really keep present in your mind that these structures have a personal impact. So when I think about structure of white supremacy and how that is so deeply embedded in structures of power within and without queer community and bi spaces, I think about how, you know, I'm also in Los Angeles. I love the bi community I have gotten to engage with here. This is really where I started cutting my little baby teeth as an activist and being like a super out and proud bi person. So I have tons of gratitude and appreciation and love for this community. And it's very white, and it's run by a lot of cis white men. And to be able to both love a community and critique a community feels really important as well. And so when I think about the structure of white supremacy, I can look at how it's affecting me personally in the community that I love by the fact that it is primarily run by white cis men. And that has been something that has been a challenge for me within the community, to find other people of color who identify as bi, and that in part is how Good Troublemakers was born, because I realized I needed to kind of carve out my own oasis where I felt like I was represented and surrounded by like-minded people. And what's funny is I like to joke that when we sort of became a collaborative unofficially 5-6 years ago, we were about 50% straight, 50% middle of the spectrum, non-monosexual, plural sexual, whatever term feels good to you folks. We have only welcomed in 2 new members, and we're now 99% queer. So there's been a lot of, I like to joke that I can smell bisexual in people, sometimes long before they even know it. And so
Your bi-fi.
My bi-fi is real strong, y'all. It's real strong. And several of them are like former students of mine who, as they were graduating, I was like, you should look me up and we should stay in touch. And now one of them came out to me in the wing of a show. Like, we were literally about to set foot on stage in a piece about bisexuality. And she was like, yeah, I'm bi. And it just, so there've been all these beautiful sort of growth coming out, people coming into their own in really beautiful, amazing ways. And I feel like that's part of how I think of bi community. I think of it not just as the one at large, but the one that I've had a hand in building around me. And yeah, I wish that little one was more reflective of the larger one sometimes.
I just want to know, like, what that was like to have to go perform after that. After, like, I'm bi, okay, but
it was fucking awesome. It was like the best thing ever, because it's this little baby who I've known since her freshman year of college, and she was a student of mine who, so she'd been dropping hints about this for like months. So I was fully aware.
It wasn't a complete,
no.
Okay.
I was fully aware, but I also believe in, like, people need to be at a place where they can come out to you. I'm not going to ask a direct question. I'm not going to push somebody. So she would drop hints and I'd be like, So it was just like the moment that she finally screwed up enough courage to say it out loud. And I was like, cool, let's go do this duet. It's going to be great. And an extra queer right now because of you. Let's go. So it was great.
I was gonna add to what you said, Kai, because one of the things that I've struggled with is realizing how I've been complicit in white supremacy, like how I've just, and even in the so I am here on this from Atlanta, right? But I love, and I feel like the gayest place in the world is West Hollywood, California. I miss you so much. I miss Trunks so much. But I've said that to say, even in those settings, in those communities, I would find myself being complicit to my white peers, and just and so to your point, I think it's important that the beginning of the work, right, is accepting ourselves, because then when we walk into a space, we're the strongest being there. But secondly, checking our own participation, excuse my French, but in the bullshit, you know what I'm saying? Like the things that we just have done and we just continue to do, you know, it's very difficult to stop. It is very difficult to stop. And I wanted to touch and agree with you on the struggle of that process, especially in the Bi community and with organizations that you described.
Yeah, I love that you brought that point up because we're all fish swimming in the same white supremacist waters. So there's a million ways that it impacts all of us that we don't see. And I know as someone who was raised by a family that left extreme poverty in the South and like built themselves up to middle class, you know, my family's survival strategy was proximity to whiteness. That's how I was raised. You know, I've been to the top ballet schools in the world where I was always the only Black person. I went to an all white kindergarten through 8th grade where there was not a single faculty of color or Black student other than my sister. And I was there for 12 years. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life purging white supremacy and getting it out of myself. And there are so many things I can look back on that I've said to students, I've said to people that absolutely perpetuated white supremacy because I didn't know better. Like coming up in ballet world and ballet is the foundation of all dance. Well, no, it's not. That's white supremacist bullshit. But I got fed that Kool-Aid along with all my peers. I had to unlearn that. I repeated that before I knew better. So it's like this is a journey for all of us all the time, and all we can do is recognize our own, like you said, complicity in it and keep working against it. I will always be a light-skinned, you know, by societal standards, attractive woman. Those are privileges. I'm fully able-bodied. Those are privileges that I will always need to be continuing to unpack and be aware of. The work never ends, and we're all in it. You know, like nobody is in a place where, no, I've transcended any need for self-awareness. No, that never ends. That's bullshit. We all have to do it, except for Heron, who absolutely has evolved past any need for self-reflection or work. But the rest of us mere mortals,
but everybody else
have work to do.
Yeah.
Yes, Heron has transcended. And I love this. I love that we're unpacking all of this. I feel like it's very therapeutic and healing for me tonight. So we've talked about the negatives and the challenges and, you know, the moments. And I wanted to hear from all of you, since you've transcended or are on your journey of transcendence. How have you been able to find that self-love, that strength through just your own work or through community supports, books, movies, etc.? How have you done that with your lovely intersectional identities?
A big thing that I just recently I even got back into was going back to therapy. Like there's just so much. There's just something to be said about taking that time for yourself. There's something to be said about having a sounding board and a confidant to just kind of help you. Sometimes even you just need to say shit out loud in order to process it. And it's also, you know, I can't speak enough about how important it is to just like have someone who's, you know, professionally your advocate and is helping you keep an eye out for all the different ways that this affects you. Because, you know, whether you're, you know, closely tracking hate blogs every single day, which I can't even imagine what that must, you know, what emotional toll that must take on you. But like, you know, it's a thing. Even just existing in the space, even just trying to sort of navigate the world, it affects you in ways that a lot of times aren't even clear until years and years after the fact. So that, yeah, just making it a point to try to really take care of my mental health throughout that whole process has just been like night and day.
I can go next because I am the one monitoring hate blogs, and I also wanted to model a little bit of, I don't know what to call it. Y'all, I'm not okay. I'm not okay right now. I got a kid at home. She's 9 years old. She turns 10 on Thanksgiving. I have a job that has driven me to 20 milligrams of Lexapro. you know, I'm supported by that medication and I'm glad I'm on it, but I'd rather not have the need to take it than feel supported by it. I mean, you know, I obviously you're going to sense a theme in my answers tonight, but like what has struck me about this year, you know, as a bi person, as a queer person, as someone, you know, trans adjacent, I'm still struggling with calling myself trans, even though I do not identify as the gender I was assigned at birth, but that's another conversation for a different time. You know, I'm really struggling with watching how all of us are being failed by systems, you know, like how just we keep this mantra of self-care and even of community care, but in fact, what we seriously need is societal level care. And that means literally paying taxes and having someone take care of my kid for free. Because right now, I am working a full-time job, you know, working another job, teaching adjunct 3 hours a week, and then 2 hours for office hours and all the prep and grading. I have full-time care for a child who is also at home learning full-time. Right there, that's her desk. So I'm not doing okay, and I'm also seeing my community not do really okay. I'm seeing a lot of us suffer, and a lot of us get harmed, and a lot of us lose our jobs, and a lot of us not have access to, you know, the pittances that we had access to before. Even those are being lost now. You know, I have some hope, obviously, for a Biden administration that they won't be as nearly blatantly antagonistic to protections on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity as the Trump administration was. But, you know, that's kind of not what I care about anymore. I care about the stuff I was speaking about last time. I care about not seeing my siblings get shot and put in places of incarceration and then kept there because they don't have $50. Like, that's what I care about. I care about my friend not putting up a GoFundMe because she can't afford her health insurance. Like, and I care about all I can afford is, like, yes, I can afford $50 to help my friend, but like, and yeah, I could probably afford a couple $1,000s, but then I'd be worried about my kid. And how fucked is that I have to decide between helping my friend and then, you get it. I'm not doing good. And I think it's okay to not do good. And I think it's okay to like talk about being systemically not good right now. So I'm just not good. Apologies, Mimi.
No, Heron, you actually took the words out of my mouth. So same page. I was gonna say that I think I wake up every day and try. But some days that trying is more, and some days that trying is a lot less. I am a performing artist, which means my entire income disappeared overnight in March. I am fortunate that I teach part-time, was able to put that together. I am fortunate that my partner was able to keep working, but that is certainly not enough to sustain two people. I have been gig to gig since then, and it's been really incredibly stressful. And then, as Heron so beautifully just said, to watch systems fail people is demoralizing, soul crushing, anxiety producing in ways that are indescribable. And to know that you on any given day are varying degrees of proximal to them failing you too, is, you know, like, that's fucking real. That's where I know my life is. And I've had more flare-ups of my own health stuff in this last year, and worse ones than I've ever had. I have drank more wine, I have drunk more alcohol than in most of my adult life since February.
Gosh, yeah, I've become such a pothead. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Like,
because we're watching, I shouldn't even say systems crumble, because let's be honest, many of them are functioning exactly as designed. The police are functioning exactly as designed. Incarceration is functioning exactly as designed. So many of them we're not watching fail, we're watching succeed. And what that further underscores for me is that they were set up to ensure that I am not okay. So I think some of my deepest motivation right now, and is also probably illuminating about my own personality, is in recognizing that these systems were designed to fail me. I will make sure that I'm okay, because there is no fucking system that gets to legislate or cross me off as a budgetary item that I will ever surrender to, ever. So if I need to be in therapy multiple times a week, if I'm on medications I've never needed to be on at any other point in my life, if I am drinking more, if I am consuming more sugar and carbs and watching more Netflix or anything else that I need to do, I will make sure that I and the people that I love make it through, because I will be damned if this systemic failure or success or any other will ever triumph over my desire and my will to make sure that me and mine are okay. Ooh. This is why when like people say hateful things online, or like extended family members have problems with who I am, I always want to be like, I feel like you have a fundamental misunderstanding of my personality. All you just did was like wave a red flag in front of a bull. Like, you think I was loud before? Buckle up, auntie. Buckle up. That was the worst thing you could have said. Don't ask me to be quiet. Come on. So I feel like I want to say that to the U.S. government right now.
Don't you just love it too when they're like, why are you so heated? And you're like,
yeah. You think this is heated? Wait. Just hang on.
Yeah.
Let me take these earrings off.
Right? Fuck me for wanting, the basics. Oh, gosh.
Well, let me. I want to say a couple of things. I know, Dr. Mimi, I know we're running this time. We're gonna do Q&A, but I want to say a couple of things because, first off, like love and the most positive energy I can send to both of you and anyone else that's having a hard time right now, because that touched me. I want to say that because I think the question was about like how have we on our journey been able to kind of grow into these proud bisexual beings before you. And I think that the first step, I know for me, it was very challenging to accept myself as bisexual. It was so much easier to just either be gay or to be straight, or, to be gay who had a couple of, straight experiences, or be straight that had a couple of, like, it was so much easier to write it off in that way. And the first step was to stop looking at my love as weird and look at it as special. I had to do that first. And that made my approach to anyone that would engage me very different, because I knew that I had something special and you had to be special to get this special thing. Bottom line. And so I think a lot of it, my point is, I think a lot of it is about perspective. I want to be transparent. I was outside, boots on the ground for President-elect Joe Biden. And I want to assure everyone listening that there's an organization called Out for Biden. My very, very close friend is director and sits on that board. And we have because the community have about 120 policies that are going on the table in the first 100 days. I will personally connect you if that's something that that you want to be involved with. He's like a brother to me that is kind of navigating that ship. So I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, y'all. You can call me the weird hopeful guy, but I see it. I believe it. I do believe in America. I know that, albeit complicated, I love my country. I think that it is no place on the planet where we would be able to have such a conversation like this and even talk about the rights and the opportunities that we deserve. And I agree that we deserve it, and will consistently be on the front line for us to get it. But the light is here, it's coming. Please don't lose faith in anything. Again, your love is special and dynamic and needed on the face of this planet. And so if I could say nothing else, is that we need you and we need each other.
Yeah.
And just don't forget that.
Sign me up for this. I want to bully the Biden administration into doing what we want. Let's sign me up. Let's do this.
I will make the connection. He might be on here actually. He's probably texting me now, but I will make that connection, because that was a big deal to me. Before I would get out in the street, I was knocking on doors in Pennsylvania on election day. Okay, I wasn't playing no games. But before I could do that, I really wanted to understand what were we doing, especially as a Black community. As often as we vote for people and get nothing, what are we doing? See, some people don't seem to understand that like it was weird. Sorry, get a little choked up. Excuse me for a second. But it was difficult for me to realize it might be more beneficial for me to be gay than to be Black. And I don't know if anybody can really understand what that feels like, but I was looking at my homeboys' policies like, well, damn, I don't think the CBC said, you know what I mean? Like, what? I might be better off in the line, standing in the gay line. And the key to it is none of us can do that, is my point. We'll all be foot and toes in all kinds of lines. And so the best thing we can do is just please don't lose faith. That's all I got. I'm sorry. I just love
great.
to both of you, and just don't lose faith.
Well, and talking, just as to put a buttoner on that too, I think that's also why I love the word queer. Like, I honest to God, like I just love it. It's because I know some people don't like, using it because it used to be derogatory, but yeah, I love the word queer specifically because it's just inherently like, yeah, just it's in the name, especially those old buttons you see where it's like not gay isn't happy, but queer isn't fuck you. I love just reasons why I love the word queer and love being queer, identifying as queer, all of it.
So we're going to open up the chat now for Q&A, but yeah, thank you, King Leo, for reminding us of the hope. And I like to use #ByMagic for that special feeling, just that uniqueness that we all bring, and that there is community out there. I know, RJ, you mentioned that you don't, see it or feel it, but there is. I think you do have to look for it.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
I'm your community, RJ. Yeah. I'm your community, RJ.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, this is the community for sure. That's what I meant. It was in that shouting my own identity from the rooftops that then all of a sudden I saw a bunch of people starting to be like, oh hey, me too, and then it's like, oh okay. Well, if that's all we had to do, then let's just get on the the nearest rooftop and just start shouting,
Mm-hmm.
or like do like Kai's doing and just make a whole collective, which now I want to, as soon as we're back to watching performances, I want to sign me up for the next one.
Well, you're welcome to all of the LA by Task Force events and AMBI events. You may be a little too famous for all of us.
What?
You are invited.
Again, when we get to go out into the world, I guess, or people questions. I guess we're just killing time before people submit questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to type your questions in the chat box. Heron, I think people wanted to know about your t-shirts. I don't know if you want to drop that site.
The one you're wearing now, because
the one I'm wearing right now is.
Feel free to model.
Oh yeah.
That part.
Abortion Networks. I'll drop a link in the chat, but go to my website, herongreensmith.com.
Nice.
This isn't my shirt. It's just one I found, but yeah, I figured. I wanted to make sure we got love. All right.
I think someone, Susan Hawkins asked, I would love to know how to get involved with that organization.
Which one?
I don't remember which organization.
That was King Leo's, the Obama.
Okay, yeah.
Out for Biden.
Out for Biden. That's what it's called.
Obama.
I don't know how this all works, but But I will, if you contact me, I'm on Instagram at King Leo BAKARi. I'm on Facebook at King Leo. I'm everywhere King Leo BAKARi, and I can connect that dot. Or if Dr. Mimi, I don't know how all this works, but I can try to make sure I can connect that dot, because I know they need people, and we'll figure that out. Thank you for wanting to know more about that, Susan.
I don't know if you're going to get inundated, or if I'm going to get inundated if all the requests come to me. Yeah, so definitely contact King Leo about getting more involved. I think that's so important, when we're feeling helpless, hopeless, scared. I try to pick like one thing I can do that day, or wait for that day, and Kai and I have texted about this, about, sometimes we just feel terrible and we have days where, we're crying, we're anxious, we can't sort of get ourselves up. And then we kind of wait for that to pass, and we wait for that day when it's like, okay, I feel good, I feel clear and sharp. And what's that one thing I can do? That's what works for me.
And recently, I don't know about this in people's local areas, but I want to share it. I recently became the head chair of the Atlanta Writers Society. And by being in that seat, I get information about different grants and things like that are city specific for people that are performers and can pay different responsibilities. So I would be surprised if I'm new to Atlanta. I was in LA for 8.5 years, but I would be surprised if LA didn't have something similar. But if anybody listening is in DeKalb County in Atlanta, again, reach out to me. There's money out there to sustain us as a artistic community through this insane time. So I don't know of every organization everywhere, but I know that part of that was in the bill and different things. And to your point, people are taking that money and it's not going where, it probably should go. So I think a lot of that has a lot to do with information and distribution. And so, anyway, all of this is part of what we all want to change. And I'm just trying to be the change I want to see and give people the information that I can to get that going. So
I had a question, Mini, but it looks like one just came in too.
Yes.
Yeah, well, there's a couple. Like there's one, Michael Leon had one, and then Lindsay Thompson also.
I'm actually going to wrap my question into Michael's here. So Michael says, could the panelists recommend books, articles, or art, other resources to be more aware of and dismantle our complicity and white supremacy, especially in queer places? And I'm happy to answer that. But I also wanted to ask one another, like, what we're like yearning for right now. What is warming our hearts, and what are we aching for, and what are we trying to manifest into the world? And so I'd love to.
I don't know.
hear
I'm
that.
aching to get into. My friend just bought me this for my birthday.
Yes!
I'm very excited to dive into this.
That's the new what is it? Tom Holland? What's
Tom
Tom?
of Finland? Yeah,
Tom
the
of Finland.
Tasha
Yeah.
and Tom of Finland comic collection. So
Amazing.
yeah, and I have even on my shelves, like right here, like I have a few queer comic anthologies that are great. Let's see, No Straight Lines is a good one. I love this one. I love, let's see, Alphabet's another. Hold on, I love this guy. This one's a really fun one. Yeah. Love these guys. These are great queer comic anthologies that I got at San Diego Comic-Con, being on the first bi panel at San Diego Comic-Con. So yeah, these are great.
Avery. Yeah.
Got them at the Prism booth, which if we ever get to go back to that, like, yeah, their Prism Comics is really, really good as far as trying to get people represented in comics. Trying to think. Yeah, I'm literally just looking at my shelves back here. Anybody else want to jump in?
yeah, I did the same thing. But I know this is gonna sound strange, but the book that did the most for me was The Alchemist. Really helped me to identify a lot of things about myself as a bisexual. I don't know if that was his point. Again, another song. But I would suggest if you haven't read it, read that.
It's so wild that you bring up that book because a friend of mine had this beautiful way of summing up this moment in a more hopeful light. And he said, we are mid-alchemy. So that moment where you don't understand what's happening, where everything feels really out of your control, it's because we're mid-alchemy. And it doesn't come
Receive
together
that.
until the alchemy is completed. And I was just
Receive
like,
that.
I
Receive
would,
that.
I'd
deep
say,
shit.
I always say we're in the Inquisition phase, but what happened right after the Inquisition? It was the Renaissance. You know, like it was the powers that be could sense that things were changing. So at first they tried to tighten the grip, and then once we managed to slip through, then that's when the sort of the Renaissance came, and we were just kind of like, you know, awakening or yeah, basically stepping into a new awareness. I would say collectively as a species and a society.
Yeah, and thank you for the someone put it more discussions like this. You know, the LA Bi Task Force is planning on doing more biologues like this. And if you have any suggestions for specific topics you'd love us to talk about, please contact us and let us know. So there's a question: what are your biggest hopes for the next administration?
There's a question above that too. What do you feel has allowed you to make the most progress in social change related to bi and intersecting communities? I know this is a very broad question. And then there was another question I also lost sight of, which was, I think RJ, you answered it too. The looking for resources. No,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was,
yeah.
yeah, there was sort of
Yeah,
looking for
yeah.
resources.
It's when there's
And
a chat and a Q&A section on Zoom, which
yes.
makes it really fun.
I'm trying to go back and forth. So in terms of resources to dismantle, because this one is specifically about white supremacy, especially in queer spaces, the beautiful thing is there's a ton of awesome resources out there right now. One of my favorites is My Grandmother's Hands, and it's by an author named Resmaa Menakem. I will write that in at least the name of the book in the chat when I'm done talking, because I can't do both at the same time. But it's written by a Black cis man who isn't queer, and he is writing from the perspective of being a therapist and also a somatic practitioner, meaning he researches how trauma impacts our bodies. And this book is written both for Black community members and non-Black people. And the reason I think it's a really important book and has been really helpful for me is that he roots white supremacy as something that lives in our bodies and impacts each one of us, and that anti-racist work is needs to come from the body as well. And for a simple example of that, I think we've all been in spaces where someone has had often very kindly something that they've said or done that was problematic pointed out to them and gotten this response, oh my God, I would never want, and you watch people get like, and they're so far away from their bodies and their own experience that they can't drop in and tap into an understanding of, oh, I know what it feels like to feel like I'm being talked over or dismissed. I've had that experience, or I can relate to that. My body knows what that is. So if I can drop down into that instead of getting trapped in, I made a mistake, then you actually have the chance to make meaningful change. And so if we're approaching anti-racist work from an embodied standpoint, we're recognizing, like, we're tracking the way our body is responding to situations and the way our body is relating to other bodies and what trauma may be trapped in our bodies, so that we can get that out and so that I can heal and therefore be a better support and help heal other communities. And he's also really conscious about stuff. I also do anti-racist training professionally, and I get a lot of white people who come to me and say things like, I started a book group, we're reading White Fragility, which was written by a white person, and it's a book group full of white people. And I'm like, hey, we're moving really far away from the point of anti-racist work. which is actually dismantling white supremacy. And I respect and I appreciate the desire for education and wanting to not do that education at the expense of BIPOC. I appreciate that. But the further away you move into your brain and the more intellectual knowledge you keep dumping in there, the more you're actually in some ways strengthening white supremacy, because white supremacy teaches us that intellectual knowledge is the best type of knowledge and embodied knowledge is like nonsense home remedy bullshit. And so he does a really great job in this book of, it's called My Grandmother's Hands, because he's specifically talking about this memory of watching his grandmother shuck corn or something in the kitchen while rocking and humming to herself. And he's like, now as a scientist, I can tell you that both humming and rocking are practices, somatic practices that soothe your nervous system. But my grandmother didn't know that. My grandmother's body just knew that that soothed her. So what can we learn and what can we unlearn by returning to the knowledge that exists in our own bodies, instead of continuing to insist that intellectual knowledge is the best knowledge that there is to be had? Anyway, it's a very long recommendation for that book, but it is an awesome book. I highly recommend.
Oh, and I think, yeah, I want to piggyback on that too, especially for the what you feel has allowed you to make the most progress in social change for intersected communities question is disabusing that, disabusing myself of that thing of like, yeah, everything has to live up here. And, I'd say leaning as much into intuition as intellect, I think has been such a huge transformative thing that's not just transformed my activism, but just transformed my life, like you learn to sort of embrace all those little bits of your, like that little voice, that gut instinct that's actually in a lot of ways smarter than the frontal lobe part of your brain. Like, yeah, that's just especially in a basically in a society that's kind of in a lot of ways designed to gaslight us, especially people who sit at the intersection of multiple axes of oppression. We're a lot of times, we are, one of the reasons why we're conditioned to sort of live up here is because it's that much easier to gaslight us, as opposed to stepping into more of that intuition and that more instinct even. Has just been so transformative and been one of the, I think, the best weapons against that conditioning and that gaslighting that I've found, for sure. So seconded, thirded, across the board.
One more book recommendation, Pleasure Activism, that's compiled by Adrienne Maree Brown. It is very queer. Adrienne Maree Brown is a Black woman who compiled this, and it's a beautiful, transformative book. And it was instrumental to some of the ethos of Good Troublemakers. Like, our activism is rooted in pleasure and joy. We celebrate our communities, we celebrate our membership, we celebrate our audiences, and that is how we believe in making transformation. There are many other routes to it too. That's just the one that we choose to embody, and I highly recommend that book. I will also drop that in the chat.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are at time, and I would wish we could keep talking all night. And I love that we ended on talking about body and intuition. It kind of reminds me of a lot of in Asian culture, when you call someone and the first question I know my parents asked me is, "Have you eaten yet?" And, it's kind of this reminder about food, but it's really like a question about how are you doing, right? Like, if you've eaten, or did you eat well, it kind of returns us back to our bodies, and, our soul, right? So I am so appreciative of all of you tonight, sharing about yourselves, your journey, your pain, but also your light and your wisdom. And I hope that all of you today in the audience follow these amazing, brilliant, beautiful people. This is how we support diversity and all the different facets of the Biplus community. Representation matters. So please follow all these folks. Thank you so much for attending tonight. And follow the LA BI Task Force. Look forward to news in 2021. We're revealing some really exciting programs. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mimi.
Thank you.